listening to Ambassador Laurent Billy, Ambassador of France.
Merci. Dear friends, it's a pleasure and also an honor to have you all here tonight at La Maison Française for the 21st World Day Against the Death Penalty. 2 years ago, when France celebrated at the Panthéon the 40th anniversary of the abolition in our country, President Macron encouraged us to continue to stand up with one goal, universal abolition. And I must say, I'm pleased, impressed, and grateful to see that tonight we have a worldwide audience. Of course, I would like to address special thanks to Dr. King, to EU Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis and Ambassador Cabanas for their friendship and their partnership in this project. But I would also like to thank very warmly our many colleagues from different continents for being here tonight. Your presence means a lot for the fight against death penalty. Without further delay, I would like to turn the floor to a very special expert. When I say very special, you will understand why in a moment. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very proud and honored to introduce this evening's event marking the 21st World Day Against the Death Penalty. It's an issue that holds a very special place in my heart. As some of you may know, I'm not only the wife of the ambassador, French ambassador, but I've been a judge for more than 30 years. I'm not so old, but in France, you can become a judge as soon as you graduate from law school. It's a job I had wanted to do since my early teens. I had a deep desire to deliver justice, and by that, I mean to restore the social equilibrium when it is disrupted by violence or the violation of rights. But I formed that ambition before the death penalty was abolished in France, and I was well aware of the ethical dilemma in which my participation in a death penalty case would place me. You can imagine how relieved I was when capital punishment was abolished in France on October 9th, 1981. Without this law, which was historic in so many ways, I still wonder whether I would have decided to become a judge who hears criminal cases. The reason we are all here this evening at the Maison Française with our partners from Europe, the United States, and Africa is to reaffirm our commitment to the right to human dignity. This is not a right that is rooted solely in European culture. It is universal, and it is significant that the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of December 10, 1948, whose 75th anniversary we will soon celebrate, twice mentions the recognition of the inherent dignity of all members of the human family. French law states that one of the purposes of a sentence is to punish the perpetrator of an offense, and that the punishment must be determined in consideration of the victim's best interests. Banning the death penalty does not mean abandoning punishment. The reason that we administer justice on behalf of the people and that they don't take the law into their own hands is because they must know that criminals will be punished. In the course of my career, I have dealt with heinous crimes. I have seen and heard the pain of victims and their families, and I have measured the impossibility of repairing the harm and easing the weight of their suffering. And I have never left the courtroom to deliberate on a sentence without carrying their pain and suffering with me. But it is our duty to punish offenders in order to protect society and obtain justice for victims, to ensure that everyone respects the right to human dignity and life. But it is our need to enforce this respect for human dignity and human life that also lends legitimacy to our right to impose punishment. On the exhibition panels here in the room, bearing the last words of death row inmates, you will see that some of them recognize the legitimacy of this value system. Martin Luther King III, who have my very special thanks for joining us this evening, will be able to tell us how the struggle led by Dr. King himself was completely non-violent in accordance with the rule of law. His march from Selma to the steps of the Alabama State Capitol in Montgomery still resonates today. By championing the abolition of the death penalty everywhere and in all circumstances, we are making the case for a legal system that respects human life and recognizes our shared responsibility for the creation of a more just, more human society. The loss of life resulting from capital punishment is irreparable and irreversible. No system can claim to be immune for miscarriages of justice. And I am all the more convinced of this in that, as a judge, I am well aware of the weight of prejudice, chance coincidences, fragility of testimonies and human memory, and occasion scientific uncertainty. Ndume Olatushani, who is doing us the tremendous honor of joining us this evening from Colorado, can no doubt speak to us about this better than anyone, having spent more than 20 years awaiting execution before finally being exonerated by the justice system. On behalf of our embassy, I want to extend my warmest thanks to all those, and there are many, who worked so hard to make this fence project possible. Art by those who are condemned to death is especially eloquent. Their creativity emerged from the depths of a prison cell, reminding us that they are an integral part of humanity, of our humanity, and that you cannot reduce a person to an act, a single act. Keith Lamar, who will speak to you this evening from his cell in Ohio, accompanied by pianist Albert Marquez, will offer you an excellent example of this. Thank you to both of them. Indeed, it is life rather than death that we are celebrating this evening with Marcus Nin and his book Final Words, a collection of the last words of Texas death row inmates since 1982. It offers a powerful reminder of human resilience and creativity in the bleakest of situations. I would also like to thank Liz Bruenig, a staff writer at The Atlantic, who will moderate this evening's talk. Ensemble contre la peine de mort, an organization without whom these artists will not be here this evening, as well as Nicola White and Daphne de Felcourt. And thanks to each and every one of you, whether you come from the legal or diplomatic community, or are simply curious and engaged citizens. I hope this evening will give you much food for thought, and that the artworks and artists who are here tonight, and with whom we will have chance to converse, will inspire you and move you with a sense of our shared humanity. I would like to conclude with this quote from Robert Badinter, a brilliant legal scholar, great humanist, and the Minister of Justice, who was instrumental in bringing forward the bill to outlaw the death penalty in France in 1981. We reject this form of justice based on elimination, this form of justice based on anguish and death, determined by an element of chance. We reject it because for us it's the opposite of justice, because it is passion and fear prevailing over reason and humanity. Thanks.
Good evening, bonsoir. It's a real pleasure for me. I'm the ambassador of Spain in Washington to be here with you. Dear ambassadors, dear colleagues, judges, artists, advocates for the abolition of the death penalties. Dear friends, it's really an honor to be here today with Dr. King, with Ndume Olatushani, with Mr. Asnin, the photographer who's going to show with images much more than we can say with words, with all of you. And Monsieur l'Ambassadeur, cher Laurent, merci pour votre accueil. And thank you again, Mrs. Billy. Thank you, Sabine, for your very inspiring words. You've been talking about dignity. This is all about dignity. And as representative of both of Spain and the presidency of the Council of the European Union, it is a real honor to participate in this event from this very creative and different perspective. As the world also commemorates the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the abolition of the death penalty is one of the key priorities of the current Spanish presidency. Since the approval of our Constitution in 1978, Spain has been at the forefront in the fight against the death penalty, and as you know, hosts the headquarters of the International Commission against the death penalty in Madrid. I would like also to acknowledge today the work of a great ally, recently deceased, former governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson. In 2018, we had the opportunity to celebrate at our embassy a debate with him and other advocates where he explained the reasons behind his bold decision to abolish the death penalty when public opinion in New Mexico was still in favor of the capital punishment by 70%. We remember him with admiration and affection. Now, in the framework of this European Fence Project, and I want to take the opportunity to really thank all the embassies that are participating in this great project, we continue to raise awareness of capital punishment in an innovative way through art. It is moving to see these paintings, as it is moving and painful to see this last words exhibition that we have the opportunity to see here at the French Embassy. It puts us face to face with the cruelty of the death penalty, with our human condition and our dignity, wherever we might be, even in prison. And what a creative way, once again, to commit to ourselves to protect human life and dignity and strive for the complete abolition of the death penalty around the world with the support of civil society, academia, and all the abolitionist movements. We need everybody's support. So thank you for organizing this. As Madame Billy said, we really appreciate the effort of so many people that have been involved in this fence project. And thank you, special thanks again to Martin Luther King III, to Keith Lamar's jazz band and Albert Marquez, to the artist Ndume Olatushani, and to the photographer Mark Asnin for their invaluable contribution to these joint efforts. And thank you again, Ambassador Billy, Ambassador Lambrinidis, for organizing this event today. Thank you, merci beaucoup. Let's have another intervention now by Ambassador Lambrinidis.
Dear friends, there is a reason why academic disciplines of language, literature, the arts, history, philosophy are known collectively as the humanities. These are the very foundations of a shared human existence. No other species, in fact, enjoys such a rich intellectual landscape. The participants in tonight's program remind us of why abolition of the death penalty is central to that humanity, to our human dignity, and they do so indeed through art. Ndume Olatushani was wrongfully incarcerated on Tennessee's death row for 20 years. 20 years, until he was released. His story highlights the injustice of capital punishment You know, when he was in, he said that after he found himself on death row for a crime he didn't commit, he bent inward and found his own creativity as a means of raw survival and resistance. Keith Lamar and his band tonight as well will also bend inward to highlight outward the strength of the human dignity in all of us. Mark Asnin's Final Words project reminds us of the irrevocable finality of executions. And of course, Martin Luther King Jr., third, with us tonight. Well, boy, the distance that we still have to travel towards his father's goal of full racial equity and equality is highlighted by the disproportionate representation of Black men on death row. I think often of your father's warning that returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Dear friends, all of us in the European Union, all 27 countries, have abolished the death penalty. We did so, some of us more recently, some of us a little further back, but for decades. I stress this especially to an American audience. There is a remarkable, inspiring civil society abolitionist movement in this country. There are remarkable testimonies from people wrongfully incarcerated, from even executioners who will tell you how their human dignity has been violated by having to pull that lever or inject that poison. But when we do so, European Union ambassadors, that is a call coming from the United States' strongest allies, by some of the biggest world democracies who have abolished the death penalty. By doing so, we recognized a number of things. This is the reality in Europe. Number one, we could stop killing innocent people. No democracy, I submit to you, can tolerate the moral injustice of killing a single innocent person. And there are 195 already in this country that have been identified and exonerated. 195. That shows you, if anything, that not even the most advanced legal systems, as Sabine said, are capable of preventing that injustice. You have to make a decision as a democracy if killing an innocent person is okay, so long as you also kill others. Putting quite aside the question of human dignity, we in Europe submit that it is always unacceptable to do so. Think of how many people in this country are not included in those 195 and were actually executed. We discovered in Europe that eliminating the death penalty did not increase violent crimes in our societies. It did not increase violent crimes. As Sabine again said, we have very strict laws and punishment for some of the most heinous crimes that do not include the death penalty and that are shown in the absence of the death penalty to be extremely effective. And at the same time, we in Europe stand by the victims of heinous crimes. We discovered in this process that we could dissociate ourselves from the poisonous alliance of countries, very often deeply authoritarian countries, that are still applying the death penalty. The number one and number two executioners today in the world are China and Iran. We Europeans are not part of that club. And you know who else is not? 2/3 of the countries around the world who have abolished the death penalty in law or in practice. Let's just keep that in mind when we consider the importance of increasing that coalition. I'm inspired by US states who have abolished the death penalty or placed moratoria on it. Today, we EU ambassadors sent a letter to the governor of Louisiana, who is a stated opponent of the death penalty, and who will have an opportunity, I hope soon, to commute sentences of people on death row before he leaves office. There are many, many others as well. But having said that, executions in this country have gone up this year. We're not talking about the numbers that you see in other countries, but they're there. I so much look forward to American leadership in this field as well. I so much look forward to the day when the US at federal and state level, all states, the majority of them today, are not executing. All states do so. It's going to be an inspiration for us Europeans, and we look forward to that inspiration. Let me just say, finally, that by abolishing the death penalty, we stopped the injustice of it in Europe. It is no great mystery or surprise that that there's a racial bias when sentences are imposed. There is an economic bias, a class bias. A lot of people, poor people without fair and adequate representation, tend to find themselves much more often on death row than others. In many instances, eventually exonerated and others not. This is something that we found that our public opinions in Europe were dramatically ready to accept once the death penalty was abolished. Sabine mentioned Badinter. He was the leader of that movement in France. When France abolished the death penalty, the public opinion in France was against abolishing. In Greece, when we abolished it, in the mid-70s, same thing. Guess what happened after abolition took place? The public opinion switched dramatically against the death penalty and with pride against it. Those who look at public opinion polls and are guided by them, those who use the language of violence as proof of their strength, they're not strong. That's not strength. Following what you think public opinion says doesn't show leadership. Leadership is shown by those who take a moral stance. And in the end of the way, I assure you in this country as well, leadership will be shown when public opinion dramatically turns against the death penalty. I'm convinced of this. Now, I see here that I'm supposed to, or at least in my remarks, it says that I'm introducing the band. Is that right, guys? All right, let me do it then. I hope there's a band to play immediately after me, and there's no awkward silence. It is my pleasure, first of all, to have participated in this event again with my dear friends and colleagues, Laurent and Santiago. Judge Billy, you were inspiring, and thank you very much for the courage of coming up here and inspiring the rest of us with your personal experience. But now it's a chance to listen to Keith Lamar's jazz band. Keith is on death row in Ohio. He'll be performing from his cell while Albert Marquez and Kayana Hutchinson are here. Please welcome them on stage.
on the phone.
Easier than it looks.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
First piece is Calling All Souls. You start.
When people typically think of an artist, what comes to mind is someone who uses their imagination to capture and convey reality as it is seen and felt. In the main, what we do or leave undone in the course of our everyday lives is viewed as insignificant unless or until we are thrown into the crucible of adverse circumstances and forced to demand from self the strength and focus necessary to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. I said these words on October 5th, 2023, a little over 3 years away from my proposed execution, which is scheduled to take place on January 13th, 2023. In other words, I'm walking towards the brink of my existence, staring directly into that terrifying darkness that awaits me all. It's difficult to live to be in. I don't know. But the only way to face it is to make it mean something. It is in this very strict sense of the word that I consider myself an artist. And what you try to the music you are about to listen to comes out of the realm of the impossible. Something that in reality not have been doable. Well, now I am successful in stopping these people from killing me. You are right now listening to my last will and testament. Embodiment of everything I've endured, learned, and practiced. It's a very remarkable piece. For me, it was never so easy to believe. I hope it has made it all the way to the future. My dear brother, I felt my past. There's a company on piano right now that's foremost upon these daily troubles. Okay, everybody should have something to find. Overall, it's languages that come from two very different worlds where there's barriers that aren't always overcome. The music of the land, Lord, comprehends the complexities that constitute our shared humanity. Ain't that right, Armando? America for the past 2 decades. I've lived out my existence in the cells on Ohio's death row, trapped in the carceral silence of solitary confinement. For the uninitiated, this means I've spent the bulk of my life 22 hours a day inside a cage, no larger than the average closet. How have I survived without losing my mind? I'm telling you the truth. When I first arrived here, I was a deeply wounded and bitter person. And if it's true to say that hate, which can destroy so much, never failed to destroy the one who hated, I was surely on my way to a definite undoing. That an innocent man could be thrown into the depths of hell with an unspeakable heart. One that stretches back to the agony and pain that attended their marriage. Indeed, what I am going through is not unprecedented. It has been done before, a long time ago and recently. They took a fellow prisoner and appointed out to me. An old man named Snoop turned me on to the healing powers of music. It's to him that I owe my family. God bless you. He gave me the means to sublimate my pain, the tools to reconstruct my mentality, which in turn allowed me to see and understand what I'm caught up to, the fact that the two ways of the struggle against oppression and greed. John Coltrane was my introduction to improvisational music. The music most commonly known as jazz, and served as the entry point into the vast reservoir of existence and the curated wisdom that accompanies what these slaves were returning to the new land. Put in this proper perspective. This music is the blood-rich document of man's inhumanity to man in the upcoming John Coltrane, the love of
This call is being terminated. This is not allowed. Please try again later. This is a prepaid debit call. This is a prepaid debit call. This call is beyond the intellectual ability and subject to monitoring and recording. Utilization of an unapproved information is criminal to communicate or violation of GDPR. Thank you for using GTL. Thank you for using GTL.
John Coltrane, the last king, setting of sun. Together with the creative force. The highest investment out there with each other. It's all trust and faith. If I'm stepping out, you know what you say, you stand and believe it with your foot. With God, that cause you because doing the business in place for things that need to be done. We must live. That's it. That's what our Lord said. That we are rolling off souls. Rolling off souls. Calling out souls. Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much. Mercy, so quick. I first want to thank the French Embassy for inviting us to perform here today on the 21st International Day Against the Death Penalty. As someone currently on death row, I don't imagine that many people in my situation get the opportunity to participate in these kinds of events. So I'm here not as an individual who has been wronged by the system, which in fact is the case, but as a representative of those who don't have a platform to speak for themselves. I forget at the moment who said it, but I was once acquainted with a quote that cautioned, we must judge ourselves as a society by how we treat those in prison. And if indeed this be the standard, I'm here to tell you that we are failing miserably. The fact of the matter is that we are inextricably connected to one another, meaning that I can't dehumanize you without dehumanizing myself in the process. A lesson that I unfortunately had to learn the hard way. And so to me, it's not that some of us die unjustly. That is the tragedy. That we die is a given. The problem as I see it is that we live in the 21st century and have yet risen to our full height, have not yet found our way to a human path. And how can we? When we are still killing each other and calling it justice. We can do better. The fact that we are here today is proof that some of us still believe that the best possible things are still possible. And I suppose I would be remiss if I didn't mention the ongoing war carnage that's happening right now in Palestine, in Israel, in Ukraine, in different parts of Africa. And it's easy to assume that we are disconnected from these theaters of war. But if we are all part of one family called humanity, then we all are caught up in these things. Kids are being killed. Mothers and wives, homes are being destroyed. And all of us somehow have the higher ground in all of this. I'm speaking from personal experience in saying that we are our brother's keeper. That will happen to one of us, happen to all of us eventually. So that you all are here today. I'm sure you could be in many places other than here. But the fact that you are here is recognition that you understand our connection as human beings. And I thank you for that. God bless you. There's still so much work to be done. And I Godspeed your journey. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. In this country, most of us operate under the delusion that we live in the 21st century. And that somehow, without actually doing the work, we have overcome our history. It's not true. Instead of hanging people from trees, we use the so-called criminal justice system to perform legalized lynchings. And take this as a sign of progress. We confuse form with substance. When I embarked on this journey 3 decades ago, I was given the choice to either plead guilty to something I didn't do or face the death penalty. I was 25 years old. And the thought that I would have to give up my life represented a great burden to me. A burden I wasn't so sure I could bear. You see, I didn't fully understand back then that there was something more valuable than simply being alive. Although I intuitively understood that existing was not the same thing as living. I also somehow understood that in order to live with myself, I had to be true to myself. And for this, I would have to pay a hell of a price. After I was sentenced to death, I was placed in solitary confinement. It felt as if I was thrown into the middle of the ocean. Try to imagine it. Water as far as the eye could see. And it's just you by yourself, floating. That's what solitary confinement is like. In a situation such as this, God ceases to be an abstraction. Something that exists apart from who you are and what you do. This is the domain of the drowned. Life is very real here. And your senses mean more to you than they ever do. What you can see, what you can feel, what you can hold in your hand. These are the only things that matter. And you begin to comprehend that under the circumstances, a piece of driftwood can be God. I mean, the smallest thing can change or save your life. And this piece of driftwood, a book, a dream, a random stranger, has not come to inquire about a particular race or religion. Instead, it has been sent to ask a more basic question. Do you want to live? And what does it mean to be alive? Tell me, what are we doing here? If you ask my friend Hitler, who's one of my favorite poets, he would tell you that living is no longer matter. Which to me implies we didn't come here to play, to have fun. If that be the case, then I would live right here where I am, right here on death row. I needed to know that. More importantly, I needed to know that it's possible to lose everything and still be saved. At some point, I had to be willing to accept that the vastness I was so afraid of was God, which exists inside of all of us. To accept this truth, I had to go within and teach myself how not to be afraid. What exactly did I have to be afraid of? Death, hell. As James Baldwin once famously said, when one is continually facing the worst that life can bring, one eventually seeks to be controlled by a fear that life can bring. I amen his closely. The arc of the moral university is first. I told you. This may very well be. But we, with our own hands and minds, must get it. We have to do the work. People are dying. People are dying. God bless you. Thanks so much, everybody.
Can you hear me? Yes. Amy, when you can, come get the phone, please. Thank you. Merci beaucoup d'être ici. Premièrement, je voulais remercier l'ambassade française por nos inviter. Quería también agradecer la participación de la embajada de mi país. Gracias a todos por estar aquí, por esta causa. By the way, this is Amy, the person in charge of the Justice for Kid Lamar campaign, who came all the way from Youngstown, Ohio. All I wanted to say very quickly is that the country where I come from executed for the last time in 1975. Catalan anarchy was one of the last ones, which had a huge impact where I come from in Catalonia. France did it a little bit later. 3 years later, they used the guillotine for the last time. This happened very recently. So I think that very soon we can see something very similar in the United States. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Albert.
Living is no laughing matter. You must live with great seriousness, like a squirrel, for example. I mean, without looking for something beyond and above living. I mean, living must be your whole life. Living is no laughing matter. You must take it seriously, so much so and to such a degree that, for example, your hands tied behind your back to the wall, or else in the laboratory in your white coat and safety glasses. You can die for people, even for people whose faces you've never seen. Even though you know living is the most real, the most real thing. I mean, you must take living so seriously that even at 70, for example, you'll plant olive trees. Not for your children either, but because although you fear death, you don't believe it. Because living, I mean, weighs heavier. Let's say we seriously ill, need surgery, which is to say we might not get up from the white table. Even though it's impossible not to feel sad about going a little too soon, we still laugh at the jokes being told. But look out the window to see if it's raining, or still wait anxiously for the latest newscast. Let's say we're at the front, something worth fighting for, say. There in that first offensive, that very day, we might fall on our face dead. We'll notice with a curious anger, but we'll still worry ourselves to death about the outcome of the war, which could last years. prison and close to 50. And we have 18 more years, say, before the iron doors will open. We still live outside. People and animals, so. I mean, with the outside beyond the walls. I mean, however and wherever we are. Because still, listen, we'll never die. This earth will go on. A star among stars. One of the smallest. Surely both blue velvet. I mean, this our great earth. This earth will go. Not like a block of ice or a scary cloud, but like an empty walnut. It will float along in pitch black space. We must grieve for this now. We have to feel this sorrow now. For the world must be loved this much if we're going to say, I live.
Thank you so much, Albert, Keyana, and Keith, for this powerful performance. Now, let me introduce you, Liz, a very talented journalist who is working at The Atlantic and who will be moderating this event and the discussion between Dr. King and Ndume. Please give them a warm welcome. Please.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Ndume, for coming out, and thank you, Mr. King, for coming out as well. So to begin the discussion, Ndume, tell me about your artwork. What inspired you to begin creating art on death row, and what inspired the pieces that we saw here tonight?
Well, first I want to say that there was some really powerful stuff that we just seen, and everything you're saying is real. It's really real. I mean, when you talk about somebody sitting in a cell, and I certainly did it, for 23 hours of the day that you can't stretch your arms out, 4 by 9 foot cell, that's some real stuff. And art for me, in those spaces, in that space that I just said, art for me literally and figuratively saved my life. It was in that space through art that I was able to resist the dehumanization that death row offers. And the way that I found it, well, I want to say this first because I always say that when I became an artist, but I'm saying that we all artists. We born with that creative gene. The one you was talking about, that how music is this bridge. Art is that bridge. And I'm saying we all possess that gene. And for me, under those circumstances, is where I found it, or it found me. And before I found myself that, I couldn't draw a crooked line straight. And, but the thing that happened for me while I was sitting on death row, it was an artist there with me. And I commissioned him to do a portrait of me because I wanted to send it to my mother. And long story short, he did this portrait. Didn't look nothing like me. It could have been anybody. And I'm sitting in this space. I'm telling you, I couldn't stretch my arms out like this. And every time I looked at it, I'm saying, man, I could have did a better job and kept my money. And but prior to me actually sending it to my mother was killed in a car accident. And it was some of the things that she said to me the last time I actually physically seen her, that in those words that I just said about I could have did a better job myself, that those were the things that was ringing in my ear. That, like I said, when this thing happened to my mother, which was the worst possible thing that I certainly had to face, even to this day. It was, like I said, when I got this information, for the first 3 days, if my eyes was open, I'm telling you I was crying. If I wasn't crying, I was balled up in a tear-soaked sleep, tear-stained face, laying down in a bunk. I ain't want to get up, couldn't get up. But on the third day, I'm laying down on this bunk, trying to sleep. My mother came to me as clear as we sitting here, and the only thing she said was, get up. And I jumped straight up, because I'm telling you, that was the thing that got me up. And I knew that when she told me I had to get up, I knew I had to get up. And that's when I found art, because I was in this space. And I mean, as far as I was concerned, I couldn't go no further than I already was. And so it was the art that, like I said, literally and figuratively saved my life. It really did.
So I know this is something that Keith touched on in his remarks, but can you say a little about how race affected your trial, your conviction, and your sentencing and time on death row?
Right. Well, for those that know, I mean, race is always an issue here in the criminal justice system, and the death penalty is no different. In fact, it's probably even worse, because when you look at the disproportionate number of Black and brown people on death row, then, like I said, is really bad. And race, for me, for those people that don't know, but if you know, I was convicted in Memphis, Tennessee. In fact, I was actually born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Had never been to the state of Tennessee until the people actually took me down there and put me on trial for the crime. And if they had their way, I already know that I wouldn't be sitting here. But I was this young Black male at the time being accused of killing a white prominent person in the city of Memphis, which was a majority Black population then, and it's still true today. But I was tried by an all-white jury. And so that kind of speaks in volumes about this system and how race plays a part. And in my case, the people knew I was innocent. It wasn't like they was making a mistake. The only reason I'm sitting here is because all the evidence that they had that proved I was innocent, they never gave it to me prior to my trial. And had they did that, I wouldn't have never even went to trial. And so race played a big issue. Like I said, race is always an issue in this country, whether it's the criminal justice system or here going to the hospital, it's the same thing.
Some of Ndume's artwork features photographs of lynchings, historical lynchings,
Right.
and recreations in those paintings. Martin, can you say a little about the links between historical lynchings of Black Americans and the modern death penalty?
Well, first of all, let me just say that it is an honor to be here tonight with each of you, especially the ambassadors and ambassador's wife. But for each of you, and to have this opportunity, certainly to share with you, to meet you, to see Brother Keith. It is often said that we must create a different climate, and I'm going to get around to the question. Actually, I forget. The question was what? The art, how does art?
The links between historical lynchings of Black Americans and the modern death penalty.
So when we think about lynchings and the line that was drawn even this evening to the system perhaps has created something that it believes is legitimate. Lynchings were unjust, the most awful thing that could happen to anyone, and there were thousands of them, literally. We have a museum now in Montgomery that we can visit, and some of that is documented, but that is not the whole story. I want to draw another parallel because we're living in a time in the United States when history is being rewritten. Books are being banned. It is said that a people that do not remember their history are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. And it is really unfortunate that we're at a time where history is being rewritten. When we understand the real history, or the true history, I should say, then we as a society, when you know better, in other words, you do better. We have an entire criminal system. We call it a criminal justice system. For some, that is what it is. But for Blacks and browns and poor whites, it is a criminal system. What do I mean by that? If it was a just system, we probably wouldn't have as many people in there. And we certainly, by now, as a civil society, would have abolished a death penalty. But we purport to be civil, but we don't act civil. If the European Union and over 27 countries can abolish the death penalty, why should the United States not do the same?
That's right.
At some point, the real question is, are we going to continue to live and try to believe that the process is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? And if that worked, most of us would be without eyes and teeth. And so we as a society have to elevate, move to a higher level. We have to, I believe, learn how to forgive. And let me just say this, you didn't ask me this yet, and maybe you won't, but my dad was killed when I was 10 years old by a white man. My grandmother, this you probably do not know, in 1974, 6 years after my father was killed, was gunned down in the church by a Black man while playing the Lord's Prayer. That man was convicted, went to jail. And the county of Fulton, which is Atlanta's in Fulton County, the prosecutor wanted to go for the death penalty. My grandfather, as a Christian minister, said, no, we don't want the death penalty. Yes, he did. He was in jail for the remainder of his life. But we advocated back in 1974 and have been advocating since then for no death penalty. Again, we say we are God's highest creation, human beings, but we act more barbaric, in my judgment, than we should. We are truly a better nation and a better world than the behavior that we are seeing and creating every day. Victor Hugo often said that wherever there's darkness, crimes will occur, but the guilty one is not merely he who commits the crime, but those who create the darkness. We have to create a different climate and a different environment in our nation and world, because we as humankind are far better than the behavior we're exhibiting right now and throughout.
So this is a question for both of you. How does the ongoing legality of the death penalty in the United States affect America's Black community today?
Well, we already know the statistical data. I would first start by saying the death penalty has proven not to be a deterrent. That's what some said. I start off with it's immoral, it's wrong. That's the first position. But secondly, when the death penalty is applied, when it comes to the Black and brown community, for example, if you look at when Blacks kill whites, when that happens, there are hundreds in a very short period of time of Black folk who've been killed. When whites have killed Blacks, there's only 12 in this very same period of time. So the disproportionate way that it is applied is also problematic, beyond the fact that first it's morally wrong. As I said, I personally, you could say, well, you've had 2 people in your family killed by an assassin, and you could easily want to see the same penalty imposed against. You could have. Because actually everyone who was involved in the killings now are dead, because it's 60 years, 55 years since my father, and my math is fuzzy, but my grandmother was 6 years later, so it's like 49 years or so since her killing, and all the persons who did those killings are now dead. But the point is, like I say, when we look at, even if you look at the numbers, Black people represent 13% of the population. But if you look at the numbers on the death penalty who are in jail, and just, how do you find a humanity? Not how do you find, but it's got to be a deep thing to think about. You may be killed, or you're headed toward killing, just as in 27, Keith, I believe, is supposed to be killed unless something miraculously happens. It could, because we have an unusual capacity and ability as a society. But again, this penalty disproportionately impacts Black and brown communities very specifically, and poor folk. And so we gotta create a better criminal system that really is just. It works for people who have resources, but many do not have resources, and so they cannot get fair representation. We do not have enough indigent defense counselors, and there are many, many levels of this. And what we see as a society is, again, if somebody does something to me, I'm sorry, I'm vacillating a little bit, but when you look at the fact that oftentimes people have been killed, just as you were in jail and you didn't, how many individuals like you are there who didn't do the crime, but yet are accused? Some have been killed and did not do the crime. In the state of Illinois a few years ago, I think that the governor found 1 or 2 persons had been killed who did not. It was later proved because of DNA and other evidence, and they stopped the whole death penalty there. Now, this is why we need to this is one of the reasons we need to get rid of this archaic form of a system that's supposed to be just in a civil democratic society.
Certainly, what he said is true, But I'm gonna give you another perspective about how it not only affects the Black community, but this whole country, every community, is that the death penalty is shown, just like he said, that it's certainly not a deterrent, and the people don't even say it's a deterrent. They don't even try that no more. In this country, they used to hang people for stealing horses, and they used to be public hangings. And during the time when they would be hanging somebody for stealing the horse, you got a crowd of 10,000 people out there. People were stealing the horses that they rode up on. So we knew for a long time the death penalty is not a deterrent. But here's one thing about the death penalty is that, and certainly the people from this country and people that watch it from around the world know that this country is one of the most violent countries in the world when you look at violence against citizens. And whenever an execution go up, I mean, it happened, here statistics show that violent crime go up, because what the death penalty says is that we don't value life. And not only that, but the people that's in the streets, particularly in the Black community, it's a lot of violence in this country. And a lot of it certainly is happening in the Black community. I'm talking about murder. And like I said, the death penalty says to a lot of people that, hell, if you ain't listening to what I want you to do, if you ain't gonna do it, then I can exercise this power over you by taking your life. And I'm saying that you see that happening when you see it on the state level, then it just reinforces this idea that violence is somehow a solution. And so you could tie the death penalty directly to the type of violent crime, murders that happen in this country. And that's across all communities. I think that certainly when you look at, like he said, the people that's disproportionately sitting there are Black and brown people. Nearly, depending on where you go, it may be over 50%, but it's certainly always hovering around 48 to over 50%. I don't care where you go in this country. Some is high, but you ain't never going lower than what I just said. And when you think about that, like I said, it only reinforces this idea that that's a solution, and people exercise it over people. And so, you know, when you talk about how it affects our community, then I'm telling you, it's tied to that, the type of violence that you actually see. And when you talk about the justice system or the criminal system, as he said, in this country, locking people up in this country is a huge industry. When you got hundreds of billions of dollars involved in locking people up, I'm telling you, somebody going to jail. Somebody going. I mean, it ain't no different than, I mean, you talk about history and the pieces that I got out there now hanging on that wall, how they kind of relate to history. That, I mean, like buying and selling flesh in this country. I mean, even though you got some people in prison, they going out in the fields working for free. People sending them in the field. So I'm telling you that the criminal justice system, when you talk about the number of people that's involved in the death penalty, you can't separate it. Then when you talk about that, you know, like I said, somebody going and disproportionately they look like me. And so that's, I mean, that's part of this system. And the death penalty, like I said, is no different. And I will say this here too, but for my family, and a lot of good people that I didn't know, I have no doubt that I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I have no doubt I would have been executed, and that just would have been that on that, just like it has been innocent people executed in this country. And the reality is that you got a lot of people don't even care about that. When I was sitting on death row, I used to say, man, we should get some people to go out on the corner and talk about they gonna kill some rats and cats right there on the corner, and you would get more attention. People come along and be crying about that than the people that's sitting here on death row. And that's just the reality in his country. I don't know what it's like somewhere else where they practice, but here, that's what it is.
So part of what brings us here tonight is a celebration of the artwork of the men and women of death row. So Martin, I wanted to ask you, what role has artwork played in the civil rights movement, and what role do you envision for the artwork of Death Row?
So first of all, art gives us an opportunity to look at creation that is just amazing and beautiful. And it gives us an opportunity, you can showcase things that have happened, and then you can project into the future what could be. I mean, everybody has an opinion about it's subjective, but it's quite amazing. And sometimes we can see things that someone can see something that someone else cannot see. Art throughout my father's era and even throughout our just history in general, the stories of the modern civil rights movement have been told through art. Just as art being able to be used when you see certain things emote various emotions, and the emotion of empathy, the emotion, some things can make us cry, some things can make us very happy, and art gives the capacity to do bring all those emotions together, and also perhaps art can help us get past various things. And so I think that when I saw this amazing art, some that you and others have done, I'm like, wow, it kind of just blows you away to see that there's talent everywhere. Just because someone may be incarcerated does not mean that they do not have incredible talent that I know I don't have any art talent at all. Zero. Like you said, you couldn't barely draw a straight line. Well, I can draw a crooked line, but that's about it. But I'm so thankful and grateful that there are those who can express themselves through the form of art, and we as others have an opportunity to appreciate and look at it, and I must say thank you to you. No matter how challenging that your life has been, you found the ability to keep going. I hope, by the way, that a full exoneration occurs, because the state of Tennessee owes you some money, by the way. I know you know this, but when someone puts you in jail and you are there for 20 years, if you were there for 20 days and you were there unjustly, it's not just an apology. It's not just that, yes, you did, I think, sign a deal where you maybe had to do a lesser charge, but that's just not right. I mean, where is the justice? That's why I say the system is not a just system. Now, you may say, well, it works. It works for some, but for most and many, and certainly communities of color, it is not working, and it is not working at all. It may even be getting worse. That's not to say there's not crime and there are not some people that don't belong in jail. That's not what I'm saying. Those are two different discussions. But there are a number of people in jail who do not belong there. There are a number of nonviolent offenders who are in jail. We are moving into a phase where there's the legalization of at least marijuana. A whole lot of Black folk are in jail because they had marijuana, and yet they're still in jail, and those sentences may not be expunged. Now, that's minor compared to a death, but it's all connected. And as Professor Michelle Alexander has a great book that talks about the whole system, the new Jim Crow. So you basically have people who you as well talked about, working, who are getting no pay, but they're doing work that benefits corporations. And whatever that particular work is, whether it's making furniture, hypothetically, I can't remember all the examples right now, but it's almost like you're getting people to work for free because they're incarcerated. And the jail makes money, the companies make money, But the individuals who are doing this work, if they make anything, it's pennies. It's very, very minor. That our society doesn't know about because we're only limitedly told. That's why the new Jim Crow, which is what Michelle Alexander writes about, and it talks about all of these things that are happening in the criminal system that we must demand becomes a true criminal justice system.
And let me say one quick thing, just to pick up on the point that he was making about two things, actually. That I would say this here, what I said in the beginning, that our creativity is directly connected to our humanity. And when you think about art, I mean, the thing about that is that, hopefully my stuff is here 100 years from now, and it would be a sign that I was here. When you go and look at thousands of years ago, when somebody put their hand up against a cave wall and spit some berry juice or whatever it was to get the color that they left their print there, we know that they was there. We can't deny that they existed. And I'm saying that's how powerful art is. When you talk about what art is capable of doing, just like Keith said, it bridges. It's a bridge to all our humanity. That's the bridge. We can speak different languages, just like the people in this room speaking different languages, but we can sit and listen to some music. And that's the thing that connects us. And I'm saying that when you talk about the people, when you go out there and you see their stuff, I'm telling you that we should support those artists. I got friends in prison still, they're on death row in the state of Tennessee that I taught how to paint. And I still support them, and I still encourage them to encourage the people around them, because it goes back to what I said, art literally and figuratively saved my life. I don't know if you ever been inside a jail or a prison, if paint on the wall is some dull color. I'm talking about prisons in this country is devoid of color. But color for me became a form of resistance. And the very thing that helped me, I'm telling you, I'm always trying to inspire other people to go out and do it. You ain't got to be sitting in prison. Yeah, go out and create some art and challenge the realities around you. And art is in all different forms. If you write something. If you paint something. Play music, whatever you do. I'm telling you, you got it. We all born with it. You just got to get up and use it. Challenge somebody. Challenge these realities that we living with.
Because following up on that, what drives you to keep creating art, and what effect do you hope it has on the people who view your artwork?
Right. Well, the thing for me is that, like I said, I still got people. I'm telling you that it's guys in prison that I consider my family, because I spend more time with them than my actual family in a lot of cases. And so art for me, I think that it's just like we holding this thing right here tonight. When you got a platform, responsibility comes along with that. And as an artist, however you creating, I'm telling you, responsibility come along with that. Knowledge makes us responsible. And I'm saying that for me, that's what inspires me. When I think about art, I think about the people. I can't never quit thinking about my own experience, but I'm always thinking about those people that's sitting there. And I'm saying that we have to support them and support the arts, because it's important. I'm saying that we hear it and we see this stuff out there on the wall. I'm telling you, people did that. Obviously, we know there's people behind that. And there's people behind that, I certainly believe, got much more to offer to society, or certainly their families and communities that they come from, besides that beautiful stuff that you see on the wall. And that's what we always have to remember. These are human beings. And if, like I said, when they got a platform through their work, I'm telling you, we need to support that. That's what, if you got a platform, you got some responsibility, just like the people who put this on here. They got this platform and they doing something about it. And it's an honor for me to be here and be a part of it.
So this is a question for both of you, but as we wind down our conversation, what do you feel people misunderstand or get wrong about the death penalty most frequently?
I don't know that most people really think about it in terms of the inhumaneness of what you're doing. I mean, it's like we emotionalize, so maybe we feel like we're so angry that we got to respond some way. So, I have to think about what my father said, which is, darkness can't put out darkness, only light can do that. Violence will never stomp out violence. Only love can do that, and nonviolence. And we as a society and a world community, we don't understand nonviolence. We operate by force, brute force. We have the mightiest military on the planet, and that's what we always utilize. As an advanced society, we certainly should be much, much further than we are. But we keep continuing to repeat the same mistakes because it does take leadership, as Ambassador stated. It takes leadership to actually execute in a different way, even if the public doesn't initially see it. That's what leadership does. It sees something and it creates a consciousness so that people may ultimately come around to that position. But when you talk about something like the heinous crime of death, you're not looking at, well, what is right? I mean, we a society with a lot of different religions, and those of us who are Christian, the Bible says thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say you can kill on Tuesday, but yet we do that all the time in this nation. And so either we're going to embrace what we say. Now, there's some who are not Christian. There's some who are not, as I said, we're Christian, we're Jews, we're, Muslims, we're Hindu, Buddhists. I mean, some of us are atheists, some of us are agnostic, so they're non-believers. But there still has got to be a set of values that the humankind embraces. And as I said, if other nations, i.e. the European Union nations, can abolish the death penalty, the United States should have long done that, because we purport to be innovative and purport to be something that, in my judgment, we're not yet living up to. We got to do better.
The question you take me back.
What do you feel that people misunderstand or get wrong about the death penalty based on your experience?
Right. I think that it's true that I think a lot of people don't even think about it until they actually, it either touches them personally or either indirectly or directly they touched by it. I think that there's certainly a lot of misinformation about the death penalty in this country. And I think part of a lot of that comes from people not being aware of this whole system that's operating around them, first off. I mean, I didn't, talk to people, and I talked to people across this country, across the world, and but here in this country, I didn't talk to people, they said, well, I had never even thought about the death penalty. But these are some of the same people that say they support it, even though they ain't never thought about it. And so I think that it's probably multifaceted, multiple reasons why why people get it wrong. But I think more than anything is that when we let people other us, I mean, it's them or it's they, somebody other than that people are easily trained out of their humanity, so to say. I mean, because if we rooted in our humanity Don't nobody have to tell me how to treat you. I'm saying that an example of that is that all of us grow up, you done kicked your toe or you done hurt yourself some kind of way. And so if I'm rooted in my humanity, hell, I know how it must feel to stump somebody's toe because I done kicked mine and hurt it before. So if I want for you what I want for myself, I'm not gonna step on your toe because I know if I stump your toe, I'm trying to hurt you. And I'm saying that when we resort to violence, when we resort to that, then we basically done ran out of words, or we refuse to sit down and try to engage in words or this communication that we actually have. And just like you, I mean, my sister in this audience sitting down there, I done had a brother and sister murdered. And I'm telling you, sitting here right now, that nobody was never locked up for it. And I'm telling you, if they was locked up for it, I'd be right on the front line saying what your family said. We don't support the death penalty. And I'm saying that when we rooted out in our humanity, don't nobody have to tell me that. Don't nobody have to tell me how to treat you. Hell, I want for you what I want for myself. And if you could get there, then I already know we'll be in a different world. If we can all get to that point, I want for your kids what I want for my kids, and vice versa, then we can get this thing right.
Is capital punishment a civil rights issue? Should we think of it as a civil rights issue?
Well, it's a human rights issue, but it does delve into civil rights also. But I see it more as human. You know, it really is a human right that is operating. I guess it's operating. I don't even know how you make the issue the right issue. As I said, human beings, boy, you said something just so powerful in terms of if we look at what do we want, you know, I mean, again, biblically, we are taught to do unto others as you would. In other words, we should treat people like we want to be treated. Like you say, we resolve most problems if we treated people like we want to be treated.
That's right.
Sometimes we don't do that. We don't treat people the way that we want to be treated. We mistreat, and maybe I don't know if I'd say there are reasons for that to happen, but it does happen. And we have to get back to the humanity. I mean, it's interesting that we as a society are not that it's nothing wrong with having emotion and being emotional, but we believe we are God's highest creation, humankind. But yet when we get ready to resolve conflict, we operate like lower animal forms. I mean, you never seen a group of dogs saying, you know, that they're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. They don't have that ability. You've never seen a group of cats talking about, I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I'm Jewish. They don't have that ability. You've never seen a group of tigers talking about Socrates or Plato or Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman or W.E.B. Du Bois. They don't have that ability. We, as God's highest creation, have the ability to think and reason, but yet when we get ready to resolve conflict, we resort to lower animal means of trying to resolve the conflict. And as I say, you can never shoot a conflict out. You can end something temporarily, but what is the long-term impact of us continuing to just, you know, it's like, you ever seen those, when I was growing up, you see those rock'em sock'em dolls, and they just constantly hitting each other. And that's what we as human beings are doing. When we are high, we're supposed to be higher than that. We got artificial intelligence. We need to be thinking about what is that going to do when someone else can become you. and we got some real serious issues that we're going to have to address in a very short period of time, and we should be addressing them right now. But my dad used to say something like, we can swim the sea like fish in submarines, we can fly the air like birds, but the basic concept of getting along as human beings, we've not learned how to master. When we master that, we will create the kind of society that probably all of us, or most of us, would want to see.
And it's really not a hard concept. I mean, to do what you just said, it's really not hard. Yeah, it's really not hard at all.
So I think that we're about ready to take questions from the audience.
Thank you very much. As we are running a bit late, maybe one or two questions tonight. Has somebody a question?
This is the time.
Now is the time.
Now's the time. Now, never.
I hear.
Thank you. This is not a question, this is a remark. Just to thank Association Ensemble contre la peine de mort. So my neighbor came directly from France. He's from the board of directors of Ensemble contre la peine de mort. And we really want to thank them because actually it's thanks to Ensemble contre la peine de mort that Ndume is here tonight. Also that we had the concert before. And I really encourage you to follow their activity. They're part of the coalition against death penalty. And I just learned that there will be the worldwide Congress against death penalty, probably in Paris in 2026. So I hope to see you all there. You have time to organize. So thank you, Ensemble contre la peine de mort.
Thank you guys. Merci everyone. So as we work on the greater battle, of course, of abolishing the death penalty, I'm wondering if you guys are working on any kind of smaller organization about arts within the prison systems, whether it be sort of like this beautiful performance we saw today. I don't know if Keith Lamar is like pairing up with other inmates, or maybe there's a bigger web growing about how do we have more power over the art within the systems right now. I mean, we have power, we're working on it, but just curious about where we are with arts and this program within the system, and of course, the greater context of abolishing the death penalty.
I think one thing is that certainly arts in the prison, but I'm telling you, just like I'm sitting here despite the system, not because it worked like he said, and it's true for most people sitting in prison across this country. We don't support them like they need to be supported. Like I said, I'm always trying to support, encourage people that I have contact with in prisons, and I do have contact with quite a few guys that are still sitting in prison. But the system is certainly there. Different places that you can go around where you got some programs that's going inside the prison, but the prison system is not set up to, to encourage people to become the best people that they can possibly be, because it's not conducive to the bottom line. I mean, in this country, 6 or 7 out of 10 people that get out of prison or return back to prison, and there's no accident. Is set up that way. And what data shows that people that sitting in prison in this country, that if they get an education or if they're involved in arts or these different programs, these are people that not only have an opportunity to further strengthen their connection to their families and community, but also to build other relationships that allow for them to come out and have people around them that help support them so they don't go back to prison. And because that, I'm telling you that's true, there is a concerted effort in the prison system to stifle every possibility, whether it's arts, education, anything that's going to make people be able to come out of a different person. And in this country, 95 or probably 98% of the people sitting in prison coming home one day, and as a society, we certainly have to figure out how we're going to welcome them back because they are certainly coming home. And I'm telling you that I do the work in hell. If you want to support that, support me, because I'm telling you, I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work.
And maybe a last question. And just so you know, all the artists will be outside, so you can discuss with them after. Last question.
Yes, thank you for such a thought-provoking presentation tonight. I have a friend who is wrongfully incarcerated, and I've noticed that it's not just punishing him, but his family, his children, his parents. What can we do to bring hope to those that are wrongfully on death row or wrongfully incarcerated? How do we bring hope to them?
Listen, most people sitting in jails and prisons across this country do not get visits. They don't get mail. And the people that, families and the friends of people I'm talking about are the people that's, like you said, that certainly hurt the most, because just like you heard on that, when Keith was on that phone, the recording came on there and told him it was time to get off the phone. I was sitting in the state of Tennessee, which is 300 and some miles from St. Louis, where I was born and raised. It would cost me $20 to make a 30-minute phone call. Hell, it was cheaper for me to call overseas to England when I was sitting there than it was for me to call right up the highway and talk to my people. Literally, it costed me more money, but it costed me $20 to make a 30-minute phone call. And I'm telling you, with those type of prices, families that get cut off, they get disconnected. So the thing that you want to give, if you want to give hope to some people that's sitting on death row, whether it's your family, people that you don't even know, I'm telling you, wherever state you come from, just go on the website and look on the correctional system and pick a name. Here, you ain't got to, like I said, just close your eyes and point to a name and send them a postcard. Send them a letter and say, listen, we know you sitting there. We know you sitting there. We know you alive. We know you exist. And I'm telling you, you might save a life. While I was sitting on death row, I had a couple of friends of mine commit suicide, not to mention there was a couple of other people. And I know why they did it. Because we was dealing with a system that took broken people and was further destroying them. And so when you have somebody sitting on death row facing death, or sitting in prison, it happens in prison too. Here, prisons in this country is probably some of the worst prisons in the world in terms of how people are treated. And it's like like we was talking about this private industry. Here, you can get on, you could Google companies that's operating inside the prison system. You got people sitting in prison, I'm talking about literally, work for 10, 20 years working on a job for one of these companies that's operating inside the prison. When they get out of prison and go try to get the same job at the same company, you know what the people gonna ask them, have you ever been convicted of a felony? You gotta check that box, and when you check that box, we don't have felons. But it's okay to use their label while they're sitting in prison. But if you wanna inspire and get some people some hope, I'm telling you, just if you don't know somebody, look on wherever you're at and just pick a name and send them a card or a letter or something and let them know that you know that they exist. I'm telling you, you might save a life. You might save a life.
Just want to add one dynamic. We used to have a society that promoted rehabilitation, and it just is, for the last 30 years, it does not even exist. That's not even the objective. The objective is just to house people and almost, as I said, recreate a form of slavery. And we know better, and we could do better. And it really takes a concerted effort by some elected officials to change laws because, you know, I remember I was an elected official in 1987 to 1993 in Atlanta, 93. And yet we were responsible for funding the jail. And what was really most unfortunate for me, we went, you know, as elected officials, you go and cut ribbons. We needed this, but to go and cut a ribbon for a jail, it didn't make me feel too good because I understood we needed it, but a brand new jail as opposed to a brand new library. Not that we didn't do some libraries too, but you know, it's a whole process that has to be done, but it starts with a level of consciousness. And as I said, people are so, I think there's so much going on within our society that there are those of us who may do the work, like you mentioned, I think the work well, some of you are doing. That is amazing, but we got to get a higher level of consciousness so that young people who are coming along now, who are looking for things to do. We have so many young people who want to save the environment, which is wonderful. But this is another issue that we need to understand how our nation can creating spaces for people to have to go to jail as opposed to maybe going to school. You stated so clearly that those who are able to educate themselves and make connections while they may be incarcerated, they are likely not to come back. I mean, prison is almost a revolving door. And the reason is because when one gets out of jail, he or she may not have the support system. One of the saddest things I experienced in my life, I used to work in Rahway in New Jersey, one of the very tragic prisons, and we'd go around to all of the prisons, and I worked with a system. 89% of those incarcerated who were working with the program that I worked with did not come back, and the reason why was because when they had a life skills training process for 6 or 8 months, a school they would go to, and then they would help them, and they had 100 companies that were going to hire them when they got out of jail. So you have that put in place. They didn't come back. What ends up happening is that you go around from company to company and they say, have you been to jail? And people will sometimes not tell the truth, not because they don't want to be truthful, but because they know they're going to get rejected. And after you're rejected 10 or 15 times, then you go back to what you know. You got to survive. So you end up, it becomes a revolving door. And that has to change. But that whole culture has got to change. It's not just one state can't do this. I mean, collectively, we have to have a desire to say, okay, our goal is going to be, and thank God there's some entertainers now who are, you know, raising criminal justice issues. There are some good organizations that are doing some good work, but we still have a lot more work to do to actually really transform our society.
Let me say this real quick. I know we got to wrap this up, but real quick, let me say this is just to follow up on what he's saying and what we're talking about. That is that if you want to inspire some people, like I said, you can certainly reach out to them. And but the thing that I'm working with a guy that I was in prison with, he spent 26 years in prison, and that he actually started an organization, Unheard Voices, while he was in prison, came home and he's doing the work too. And one of the things that we working on now is trying to get people that's sitting in prison, because most people sitting in prison got a family. And we trying to get them to understand that you got power, and your power is your people. You need to encourage your people to go out and vote, because certainly that makes a difference. When you say, talking about trying to get in behind politicians, and it's certainly a hard fight doing that. But the reality is that if we can get enough people in prison to get their families to go out and participate, and I know it's hard, because I'm telling you, the families of people that sitting there are the most beat down people. But if we inspire and encourage them to get your people involved, you got a mother, sister, brother, somebody that you can go out and have and represent you at the polls, then you need to be doing that. And that's part of what we're doing now, is just trying to inspire these guys across this country to get your people involved. So you ain't voiceless no more. They gonna be the ones that go out and change the system for you.
Well, thank you so much for being here tonight, both of you. I really appreciate the discussion, and thank you all for being here as well.
Thanks.